Hey folks, Robbie Payne with Chrome Unboxed, and today we're going to be unboxing the Asus Chromebook Flip CE213. Now this is a device that is aimed squarely at the education sector, but it has a couple unique features as well. 360-degree hinge, a 12+ hour battery life, but most importantly, it's the first device that we're going to be looking at with the Apollo Lake chipset. We want to give a special shout out to Troxel Communications for providing this device for us to take a look at. It's about a month before this device comes out, so they've helped us out by getting one here in the office for us. And Troxel, you can learn more about them if you look in the description below. But for now, we're going to get started. Alright guys, so let's get into this thing. There's not much on the outside. This is a pre-production unit. This device will ship late May. There's not really much on the outside to define anything, but it looks like general Asus boxing. We've got part of a power cord here. I'll set this to the side for now. Oh, there's the rest of it. Okay, so we have a USB-C block, and then this isn't an optional power extender. So like with the Pixel C, or the Pixel, I'm sorry, for instance, this has kind of the duck head plugs. This does not have that. You have to use this part as well, looks like. So slide that to the side and get to the goods here. So yeah, it's a good looking device. If you've seen a C202, I think is what the model is, the other education model that came out last year, it's got that same kind of textured, obviously plastic design. We've got the bumpers around the edges, but ultimately for an EDU device, this thing is rather sleek. You have reinforced metal hinges here, so no plastic going on there. Again, the bumper goes all the way around the edges. It's military spec. It can handle lots of drops, falls, dust, and spills. I would not put it underwater, but it's going to handle spills across the keyboard well. Interestingly enough, too, across the back you have a field serviceable battery, and it's not just swappable, because that would mean you can pop it out. There is a screw there, so there will require a little bit of effort to get the battery out, but you could pop that battery out, pop a new one in, boot right back up, and keep going. They are promising 12 hours of battery on this thing, so I don't know how big of a deal that is, but still kind of cool that it's there. Nice easy hinge to lift. And it looks like those keys are nice and tall. They tout, I think, a 2mm travel, and I would say that's probably accurate. That's a lot of travel for a relatively thin device. Not a lot of flex in the keyboard. The trackpad feels really good, nice and clicky. Yeah, so a lot of you who have watched videos, you've seen where trackpads come in and they kind of have a little bit of an indentation before they actually hit the click mechanism. It's really, really frustrating to have that. No such thing here. This thing sounds great, feels really good, so I'm excited to kind of mess with that as well. Obviously, this is all plastic around the edges. We've got some pretty big bezels here. Again, this is an education device, so some of these things are not going to be the sleekest, nicest looking things in the world. They're not really meant to be. They're meant to be rugged and deal with people pounding on them and dropping them and all that kind of stuff. Let's talk real quick about ports. We have USB-C over here, power, USB 3.0, USB-A, and micro SD card slot, headphone microphone jack, nothing across the front. And on the side over here we have the volume rocker, another USB-A 3.0, another USB-C, and a Kensington lock. So that's actually really encouraging to see USB-C on both sides, USB-A on both sides. So if you're charging on one side, you can put your monitor output on the other side, or you can choose which side you want to charge from, whichever one makes sense at that time. So that's always a nice feature, rather than them cramming everything on one side. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, the hinge lifts really well, but it's actually pretty firm. So yeah, well done there. Sorry, our table's not level at all. But yeah, that thing's not moving much at all, which is really nice, especially considering how easy it is to actually open. It is a 360 device, and you can see, I mean, relatively thin. This thing is, again, for an education device, when you think rugged and all that kind of stuff, you usually think ugly, honestly, and this is not that. This is actually really attractive. So you can do all the different modes and all that kind of stuff here. So we have the tablet mode, and at I think 2.5, 2.3, something like that pounds, this thing isn't crazy heavy, which is nice. It also comes with a really unique feature, the world-facing camera. So whenever you're in tablet mode, and you flip this thing around, you actually have a camera pointed out this way. So for different interactive types of things, students will be able to use those cameras probably pretty effectively, I would think. We have an anti-glare screen, an anti-glare touch screen, which is interesting on this. There's two models. So there's this one, and there's another one that will be a little bit more expensive, I think 50 bucks more. Pricing hasn't quite been set, but it will be stylus equipped and have a Wacom digitizer built into the screen. It will be glass covered, which this one is plastic and anti-glare. So now that we're all logged in, you can kind of see probably one of the first things I'm seeing that might be a little bit of a shortcoming. The display is not that bright. The viewing angles aren't bad, so it is some sort of IPS type display, so I can get left and right either way. You lose a little bit of brightness, but ultimately the viewing angles are pretty decent here. And it's interesting because we have a matte finish display here that's touch enabled. It's honestly the first one I've ever used that usually the touch usually means glass over top. So it's an interesting surface to interact with on touch, but it's nice and smooth. And anti-glare with a display that's not quite as bright helps mitigate a little bit of the sunlight coming. And so, I mean, we're under a lot of lights here and I can still use it. So it's not the worst display I've ever seen or anything like that, but it is not the brightest thing in the world. So keep that in mind depending on your use cases. I'm going to do a couple things here because this device has a chipset in it that we have not tested yet, and it is the Apollo Lake. So it's the successor to the Braswell line that was in quite a few Chromebooks last year. So we're going to run a couple tests on this and see how it fares. Keep in mind, Braswell chips usually scored somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000, and you could crest into the mid 8,000s sometimes on them, depending. There were a lot of different models. This one is the lower model N3550 or 3450. I'm sorry. So we're seeing a 10,736 score here. So that usually those scores can range a few hundred points either way. So it's reasonable to think that we could approach 11,000 in Octane here, which is a nice bump up. This is the N3350. There's a 3450, I believe, is what the model number on it, that bumps up to a quad core. So we probably see a little bit better performance out of it. But it looks like Apollo Lake in general is going to be a really, really nice upgrade from Braswell, and it needed it. Braswell devices always were a little bit slow, and so it's nice to see something jump up a little bit higher. For the review, we'll run the speedometer. It takes a little bit longer, so I'm not going to do that right now. But I would expect to see 30s somewhere in there. I would hope, basing on some of the other ones we've seen. Let's do some real world things real quick. So loading up the Verge, which again is always really content heavy. Everything's scrolling nice and smooth. That's tracking nice and smooth. Pinch to zoom works really well. So additionally, this thing will come with Android apps out of the box. So teachers will be able to deploy Android apps to these devices from the management console and choose which apps you do and don't want them to have along with their Chrome apps. So overall, guys, first blush, it looks really good. We'll see how the battery life does because that's an important thing. This keyboard seems like it's going to feel really good. The travel's really good, clicks good, trackpad's great. So when you nail this, everything seems to kind of flow out from that. I can forgive the display not being the best in the world because they need to keep price down and they need to keep performance up. So as long as it's viewable indoors, you're usually pretty good here. Overall, it's slick, it's nice, it looks good. We're off to a great start with this one. So make sure and check back for the full review coming soon. Until then, guys, give a thumbs up if you like it. Hit the subscribe button down below. And don't forget, there's some info about Troxel, who provided this device for us, down there in the description as well. And until next time, guys, we'll see you.